The phone woke Benjamin Mercer at 2:17 in the morning, vibrating across the nightstand with the insistence of bad news. He'd learned that lesson in Vietnam 50 years ago. Nothing good comes from a call in the dark hours when decent people sleep. His hand found the device before his eyes fully opened, arthritis sending familiar complaints through knuckles that had turned more bolts than he could count in 4 decades of mechanical work. Sheriff Danny Paulson's voice carried the weight of 40 years of friendship and something heavier underneath. "Ben, you need to get to County General. It's Grace." The room compressed, sound muted. His lungs forgot their rhythm. The digital clock glowed accusatory red in the darkness of the bedroom, where Linda's side had stayed empty for 5 years, her pillow still carrying the ghost of lavender shampoo he couldn't bring himself to wash away. What happened? The pause lasted 3 heartbeats. Someone hurt her. "That's all I can say on the phone. Come now." Slate they'd called him that since boot camp because of his gray eyes and unreadable expression under fire was moving before conscious thought caught up. Jeans from yesterday's work at the garage, flannel shirt, boots that had witnessed 30 Montana winters. His reflection in the bathroom mirror showed a man of 64 years beard, more salt than pepper scar tissue, from a bar fight in 1975 visible on his left jaw. The fight that had earned him 6 months in county and taught him that rage solved nothing except creating more rage. The drive to Copper Ridge County General took 11 minutes through streets emptied of everything except streetlights, casting yellow pools on asphalt still holding the day's heat. September in Montana meant the mountains had already claimed their first snow, while the valleys clung to summer's last gasps. His 1971 Chevy pickup, the one he'd bought the year Grace was born, the year Linda had looked at him with eyes that said, despite everything, despite his past and his mistakes, she believed he could be the father their unexpected late-life child deserved, rumbled through intersections without stopping. No traffic, just him and the sick knowledge that something had broken in the world while he slept. The emergency room entrance blazed with fluorescent hostility. A nurse looked up from her station recognition, flashing across features that had witnessed too many night shifts and too much human damage. "Mr. Mercer, room 7. Sheriff's with her." His boots squeaked on linoleum that smelled of industrial cleaner, failing to mask older, darker scents. Room 7's door stood partially open. Through the gap, he could see Danny Paulson's broad back, the sheriff's uniform pressed despite the hour, and beyond him a bed where something small and broken waited. Grace, his daughter, his only child. Born when he was 47 and Linda was 46, a biological surprise the doctors had called miraculous, and Linda had called their second chance. She died never knowing if that second chance had truly arrived or if Slate had simply been play-acting the role of responsible father while his past lurked beneath polished surfaces. The girl in the bed bore little resemblance to the 17-year-old who'd left for a graduation party 8 hours ago. Her face carried bruises that would deepen to purple by morning. Her right arm rested in a temporary sling. But worse than the visible damage was her expression, vacant, retreated to some internal shelter where the world couldn't reach. "Grace Ween," his voice came out rough as gravel. She didn't turn her head, didn't acknowledge his presence. Sheriff Paulson moved aside, his weathered face carrying the same expression Slate had seen on Marine Corps officers delivering casualty reports. "Ben," they'd served together. Different units, but the same shit. Danny had done 2 tours. Slate had barely survived one before the shrapnel in his left ear had sent him home with 60% hearing loss and nightmares that took a decade to fade into occasional bad dreams. Who did this? Danny's hand landed on his shoulder, firm pressure that said, "Wait, listen, don't do what you're thinking." "Doctor's finishing the rape kit. Police interviewed her already. She's in shock, but she gave us a name." The word rape hit like incoming mortar fire. The room tilted. Slate's knees, already weakened by 40 years of kneeling on concrete garage floors, threatened to fold. He grabbed the bed rail, cold metal anchoring him to reality. Who? Not a question, a demand. His vision had narrowed to a tunnel, peripheral awareness bleeding away until only Danny's face remained in focus. Jordan Hale. The name meant nothing. David Hale's son. Still nothing. Danny's expression shifted, surprise mixing with something like pity. "You really don't know David Hale's been on the city council 15 years. Runs most of the planning committee. His son Jordan's 18, just got accepted into West Point. Golden boy, high school quarterback, straight A's, the whole package." I don't care if his father's the governor. I want to know what happened to my daughter." The words came out quiet, controlled. People who didn't know Slate Mercer might have missed the danger in that tone. Danny, who'd seen him hold position during a 3-hour firefight outside Quezon, when everyone else had broken and run, understood perfectly. "Ben, I need you to hear me. Really hear me. This is complicated." "Nothing's complicated about rape." "In a perfect world, no, but David Hale's got connections. He plays golf with Mayor Preston. His wife's on the hospital board. Their families donated $500,000 to Copper Ridge over the years. Schools Park's the new library wing." Slate's hands tightened on the bedrail. The metal groaned. "Are you telling me his money matters more than my daughter?" "I'm telling you the reality. Jordan's lawyer is already here. Some hotshot from Billings probably costs more per hour than you make in a week. They're claiming it was consensual, that Grace is lying." The rage that lived permanently in Slate's chest, the rage he'd spent 40 years learning to control, to redirect, to sublimate into productive work, and raising his daughter right, stirred. His breathing quickened. His vision sharpened. The old instincts that had kept him alive in combat woke up and started planning trajectories, vulnerabilities, optimal approaches for maximum damage. Danny's hand tightened on his shoulder. "Brother, I know what you're thinking. I'm thinking it too. But you go after that kid, you go after his family, and you're the one in cuffs. You're the one with a record." Remember 1975, the bar fight. The assault charge. 6 months in county jail for putting Tommy Hendricks in the hospital after Tommy had made the mistake of commenting on Linda's ass within Slate's hearing. He'd been 25, fresh from the war, all anger and no wisdom. Linda had stayed with him through the trial, and the sentence had been waiting when he got out, had looked at him with those steady hazel eyes and said this was his one pass, his one chance to prove he could be better than his worst impulses. He'd spent 39 years proving it. "I'm not going after anyone." The lie tasted bitter. "Ben, I said I'm not, but I want to know everything, every detail, and I want justice. We'll investigate. I promise you that. But it's going to take time, and you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that the DA might not file charges." "Why the hell not?" "Because Jordan's claiming it was consensual, because there were no witnesses, because the rape kit will show sexual contact but can't prove force, because in he said, she said cases, the person with the better lawyer usually wins." Slate's knuckles had gone white on the bed rail. The arthritis in his hands screamed protest, but he didn't loosen his grip. Couldn't. If he let go, he'd do something he'd regret, something Linda would never forgive, even from whatever place the dead observed the living. "Can I talk to her?" Danny stepped back, gestured toward the bed. "Doctor said she's not responding much. Trauma response. But yeah, try." Slate moved to his daughter's side, easing his bulk into the plastic chair that creaked under his weight. Up close, the damage looked worse. Bruises ringed her neck handprints, probably where someone had grabbed and squeezed. Her lower lip was split. The sling immobilized her right arm wrist, swollen to twice its normal size. He took her left hand gently. Her fingers lay limp in his calloused palm, no response to his touch. Her eyes stared at the ceiling tiles, tracking something invisible or nothing at all. "Baby girl." His voice cracked on the endearment. He'd called her that since the day she'd emerged screaming into the world, impossibly small Linda's hair, and his eyes perfect and terrifying in the way all newborns are to men who understand how easily fragile things break. "I'm here, I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." Nothing, not even a blink. "Grace, I need you to hear this. Whatever happened, however bad it is, we're going to get through it. You and me, together. Like always." Her fingers twitched, just once, barely perceptible. But he felt it. "That's my girl. You don't have to talk. You don't have to do anything. Just know I'm here, and I'm going to fix this. I promise you that." The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Promises he had no idea how to keep. Promises that required faith in a system Danny had already warned him was rigged against people like them. People without money or connections, or lawyers whose hourly rate exceeded monthly mortgage payments. Behind him, the door opened. A doctor entered, young enough to be Slate's son, exhausted enough to have pulled an all-nighter. His name tag read Dr. Chen. His eyes carried the professional sympathy that medical schools taught, but experience stripped away layer by layer until only efficient competence remained. Mr. Mercer, I'm Dr. Chen. I've been treating Grace. Slate stood released his daughter's hand with reluctance. Her fingers fell back to the bed lifeless again. How bad? Physically, she'll recover. Bruised ribs, sprained wrist contusions. The swelling will go down, the bruises will fade. We've completed the sexual assault kit and sent it to the state lab for processing. And mentally, Dr. Chen's expression shifted, clinical mask slipping enough to reveal the human underneath. That's harder to quantify. She's presenting symptoms consistent with acute trauma, not responding to verbal stimuli, affecting flat dissociative. We're recommending immediate psychological evaluation and ongoing therapy. Is that doctor speak for she's broken? It's doctor speak for she's experienced severe trauma and will need professional help processing it. Mr. Mercer, your daughter is young and resilient. With proper support, victims of sexual assault can recover and lead full lives. But it takes time, and it takes a strong support system. The words victim and sexual assault hung in the air like ordnance that hadn't yet detonated. Slate had read about these things, seen the statistics, heard the stories. But those had been abstractions, other people's nightmares. His daughter had been safe, protected. He'd taught her self-defense, made her promise to text him every hour when she went out, installed tracking software on her phone so he always knew where she was. All of it useless. All his precautions and paranoia and determination to keep her safe had amounted to exactly nothing when she'd needed it most. Can I take her home? Not yet. We want to keep her for observation. 24 hours minimum. Make sure there are no complications. And frankly, Mr. Mercer, I think you both need time to process before you're alone together. Is there anyone else? Family, Grace's mother. Her mother died 5 years ago. Cancer. I'm sorry. What about other family, grandparents, aunts, uncles? No one. It's just us. Dr. Chen made a note on his tablet stylus, scratching across the screen. We have resources, social workers who specialize in trauma cases. They can help coordinate care, connect you with support groups for families of assault victims. I don't need support groups. I need my daughter to be okay. Mr. Mercer, with respect, you need support too. What Grace experienced doesn't just affect her, it affects everyone who loves her. And trying to shoulder that burden alone isn't healthy for either of you. Sheriff Danny had moved to the corner of the room, watching this exchange with the careful attention of a man whose job required reading situations before they escalated. He'd seen Slate's hands clench, had tracked the tension climbing his shoulders, recognized the signs of a man approaching his breaking point. Ben, why don't we step outside, let Grace rest, give you a chance to breathe. Slate wanted to refuse, wanted to stay rooted to this spot until Grace woke up and spoke and proved she was still his daughter underneath the trauma. But he could see Dr. Chen's concern, Danny's worry, and somewhere beneath the rage and grief understood they were right. I'll be just outside. If she wakes up, if she needs anything, we'll get you immediately. The hallway felt miles long. His boots struck linoleum with hollow echoes that reminded him of Walking Point in Vietnam, every step potentially the last, hyper-aware and exhausted simultaneously. Danny guided him to a waiting area furnished with chairs designed to be uncomfortable enough that people wouldn't loiter. They sat. Slate's knees popped, his back protested the cheap plastic seat. His hands trembled with adrenaline that had nowhere to go. Tell me everything you know. Danny pulled out a small notebook, flipped pages. Grace was at a graduation party, Jason Thornton's place out by the lake. About 40 kids. Parents were home, but in a different part of the house. Around 11:30, Grace texted a friend saying Jordan Hale offered to give her a ride home since her car wouldn't start. Friend replied, telling her to be careful that Jordan had a reputation. And what kind of reputation? The kind that doesn't stick because his father's got enough money to make problems disappear. Nothing official, just rumors. Girls saying he got too aggressive at parties, that he didn't understand the word no. Slate's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Grace got in his truck, a black Ford F-250, lifted custom rims, the whole thing. Jordan drove toward town but took a detour out to Marker's Point. You know it. He did. Remote overlook 20 minutes outside Copper Ridge, popular with teenagers looking for privacy. He'd taken Linda there when they were dating back when the world was younger, and his biggest worry was whether she'd let him kiss her goodnight. What happened at Marker's Point? Grace's statement is minimal. She's not talking much. But from what we pieced together, Jordan parked, started making advances. When she said no, he didn't stop. She fought. He overpowered her. Afterwards, he drove her to the hospital access road and left her there. Anonymous call came in 20 minutes later from a burner phone directing us to her location. He raped her and dumped her like garbage. That's the allegation, yes. And Jordan's saying what? That she wanted it. Danny's expression hardened. Jordan's lawyer issued a statement, claims the sexual contact was consensual, that Grace became upset when Jordan rejected her afterwards, that she's fabricating the assault out of anger and embarrassment. The rage Slate had been controlling broke free. He stood so abruptly, the chair skated backward, plastic legs screeching on linoleum. His fists clenched. His vision went red at the edges. 40 years of discipline and restraint and careful control evaporated in the face of this injustice. That fucking liar. Grace doesn't lie. She's never lied to me about anything. And now this piece of shit is calling my daughter a liar after Danny was up, hands on Slate's shoulders, voice cutting through the fury. I know. I believe Grace. But my belief doesn't matter. Evidence matters. Testimony matters. And right now it's her word against his, and he's got the better story. How is his story better? Because he's Jordan Hale, captain of the football team, West Point appointee, model citizen. And Grace is... Danny stopped catching himself. Say it. Ben, say what you were going to say. Danny's shoulders sagged. Grace is the daughter of a mechanic with an assault conviction. No offense, brother, but in a credibility contest, the system's going to lean toward the kid with the clean record and the influential father. So my past mistakes mean my daughter doesn't get justice. I'm saying we need more than just her testimony. We need evidence, witnesses, something that proves force was used. The bruises aren't enough. Jordan's lawyer will argue they could have occurred during rough consensual sex, that Grace has a history of boyfriends, that she's sexually active. Slate's hand shot out, grabbed at Danny's uniform shirt, bunched the fabric in his fist. Don't you fucking dare finish that sentence. They stood locked like that, two old warriors who'd saved each other's lives in a jungle half a century ago, now separated by a gulf of law and procedure and reality. Danny didn't try to break free, didn't reach for his sidearm, just stood there letting Slate feel the rage, letting him ride it until it crested and broke. Slate released him, stumbled back. His hands shook. His breath came in ragged gasps. The hallway spun slightly, vertigo from adrenaline crash mixing with exhaustion. I can't just stand here and do nothing. You won't, but you'll do it smart, legal, by the book, because the moment you step outside the law, Jordan's lawyer will use it. They'll paint you as the violent ex-con threatening their innocent client. They'll get a restraining order, maybe get you arrested, and then Grace is alone in this fight. The logic cut through Fury's haze. Danny was right. He was always right about tactics and strategy and the long game. It's what had kept them alive in Vietnam, when other units had made stupid mistakes and paid with their lives. What do I do? Wow. You go home, get a few hours sleep, come back tomorrow when Grace is more responsive, and you call a lawyer, because Jordan's father isn't going to let this go quietly. I can't afford a lawyer, not the kind who can go up against the Hales. You've got friends, Ben, people who owe you. I'll make calls. We'll figure it out. The idea of charity rankled. Slate had built his life on self-sufficiency, on earning his way, on never asking for what he couldn't repay. But Grace's battered face flashed through his memory, and pride dissolved. Okay. But Danny, I need you to investigate this properly, by the book like you said, because if the system fails my daughter, I will handle it my way. And we both know what that means. Danny's expression went carefully neutral. I didn't hear that. Yes, you did. They stared at each other, decades of friendship balanced against professional duty and personal loyalty. Finally, Danny nodded once. Go home, Ben. I'll call you with updates. The drive back to his house took longer than the frantic race to the hospital. Every red light lasted an eternity, Every empty intersection reminded him that Copper Ridge slept while his world burned. The house Linda had picked out 30 years ago, ranch-style 3 bedrooms, detached garage large enough for 2 vehicles and a workshop, sat dark and accusing under streetlights. He parked in the driveway instead of the garage, couldn't muster the energy to open the door and navigate around his tools and parts and projects. The front door key stuck in the lock, humidity or age, or his shaking hands making the simple act difficult. Inside, everything was exactly as he'd left it 7 hours ago, when Grace had kissed his cheek and promised to be home by 1. Her jacket hung on the coat rack. Her shoes, the white sneakers she'd begged for 3 months ago, sat by the door. Her presence filled every corner despite her absence. The photos Linda had insisted on displaying covered the mantel: Grace at 6 months, toothless grin and wispy hair. Grace at 5, gap-toothed on her first day of kindergarten. Grace at 12, braces, reflecting camera flash. Grace last month, 17, and poised on the edge of adulthood, her whole life stretching ahead, full of possibility. Slate walked past them all to the kitchen, pulled a glass from the cabinet, filled it with tap water he didn't drink. His reflection in the window over the sink showed a ghost, a hollow-eyed old man whose failures had caught up despite 40 years of running. The bottle of whiskey sat on the top shelf where he'd moved it 5 years ago after Linda died. He'd drunk himself stupid for 3 months after her funeral, only stopping when Grace, 12 years old and newly motherless, had looked at him with eyes too old for her face and asked if he was going to die too and leave her alone. He'd been sober since. 5 years. But tonight the bottle called with old familiar promises of numbness and escape. His hand reached up, fingers wrapped around the glass neck. He pulled it down, broke the seal, poured 3 fingers into the glass still holding water. The amber liquid swirled, mixing with tap water, turning cloudy. He raised the glass to his lips. Whiskey scent filled his nostrils, sweet and sharp and promising oblivion for whatever hours remained until dawn. Linda's voice echoed in his memory, soft and implacable. "You're better than this, Ben. You've always been better than this. Don't prove me wrong now." He poured the whiskey down the sink, watched it spiral down the drain, rinsed the glass, returned the bottle to its high shelf where temptation lived, but couldn't quite reach. The spare bedroom had become Grace's domain over the years, teen girl chaos, organized according to logic he'd never quite understood. Band posters competed with academic achievement certificates. Stuffed animals from childhood shared shelf space with college prep books. Her laptop sat closed on the desk screensaver, probably showing photos of friends he'd never met, experiences he hadn't been part of because she was growing up in a way, and that was natural and right, even if it terrified him. He sat on her bed, springs creaking under his weight. The pillow smelled like her shampoo, some coconut mixture she discovered at the drugstore. Her favorite blanket, the one Linda had quilted before Grace was born, every square carrying some memory or meaning, lay folded at the foot of the bed. Slate pulled the blanket over himself despite the September warmth, laid his head on her pillow, closed his eyes against tears he refused to shed because crying was surrender, and he hadn't survived Vietnam and Linda's death and 40 years of hard living by surrendering. Sleep didn't come. The hours between 3 and 6 passed in that liminal space between waking and rest, his mind churning through scenarios and possibilities and revenge fantasies. That shame followed immediately. Grace's face haunted the darkness behind his eyelids. Jordan Hale's face, unknown but constructed from imagination and fury, appeared alongside. What would he do if the system failed? If Jordan walked free and Grace lived with this trauma forever, and justice proved to be one more lie powerful people told to keep the powerless quiet he'd killed in Vietnam? 7 men confirmed, probably more if you counted artillery coordination and decisions made that sent others into harm's way. Those deaths had been sanctioned legal, wrapped in the flag, and orders from officers who drank themselves to sleep every night with the weight of command. Could he kill again? Could he track Jordan Hale down and end him with the same cold efficiency he'd used on enemy soldiers 4 decades ago? Yes. The realization arrived without drama or doubt. If the system failed Grace, if Jordan Hale walked free, Slate would kill him. Prison would follow. Grace would lose her father on top of everything else. But Jordan Hale would be dead and unable to hurt anyone else's daughter. The thought brought no comfort, just grim certainty. His phone buzzed at 6:15, pulling him from the half-sleep. Text message from Danny: Grace awake and asking for you. No change in condition, but responsive. Come when ready. Slate was already moving. throwing off the blanket, grabbing his jacket, checking his wallet for cash and insurance cards. The morning light hurt his eyes too bright after the darkness of Grace's room. His truck started with its usual reluctant rumble. The drive to County General traced the same route as 4 hours ago, but daylight transformed everything. Copper Ridge woke up around him, commuters heading to work, delivery trucks servicing businesses, joggers taking advantage of cool morning air before September heat arrived. Normal life continuing while his daughter lay broken in a hospital bed. The ER waiting area had acquired the usual morning crowd: construction worker with an injured hand, elderly woman clutching her chest, mother with a feverish toddler. They glanced at him with the incurious assessment of people deep in their own crises. He was just another worried man in work clothes and boots, unremarkable except for the barely controlled fury vibrating beneath his stillness. Grace's room looked different in daylight. The harsh fluorescence had given way to natural light through windows that overlooked the parking lot. She sat partially upright, bed adjusted to 45 degrees, eating applesauce from a plastic container with her left hand. Her right arm remained in the sling. The bruises looked worse, purple and yellow, spreading across skin that had been unmarked yesterday. But her eyes tracked his entrance. Focus had returned, the thousand-yard stare replaced by present awareness. "Daddy," the word broke him. She hadn't called him that since she was 12, preferring the teenage distance of dad or his first name when she was angry. But trauma had stripped away pretense and returned her to childhood, to the years when he'd been her hero and protector, instead of the old man she humored while planning her escape to college and adult independence. He crossed to her bed, wrapped her carefully in his arms, mindful of injuries he couldn't see. She trembled against his chest, small and fragile, in ways she hadn't been since infancy. "I'm here, baby girl. I'm here," she cried, then the storm that had been building since last night finally breaking. Her shoulders shook. Her breath came in gasps. The applesauce container tumbled to the floor, forgotten. Slate held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, the other supporting her back, making wordless sounds of comfort that transcended language. When the tears finally subsided, she pulled back enough to look at his face. "I tried to fight. I did everything you taught me. But he was stronger." "I know. I scratched him. Drew blood. I think I broke his nose. But it wasn't enough. Grace, listen to me. This isn't your fault. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand? Nothing." She shook her head, hair falling across bruised features. "I got in his truck. I trusted him. I should have known." "No, don't do that. Don't blame yourself for trusting someone who seemed trustworthy. That's on him. All of it. The assault, the lies, everything. That's Jordan Hale's fault, not yours. The police asked me all these questions about my clothes, about whether I'd been drinking, about past boyfriends, like they were trying to prove I wanted it." Slate's hands clenched into fists. He forced himself to relax. His daughter didn't need his rage right now. She needed his steadiness. "They have to ask those questions. It's procedure. But Grace, Sheriff Paulson believes you. I believe you. And we're going to prove what happened." "How Jordan's already saying it was consensual. His lawyer was here this morning. Some woman in an expensive suit. She said Jordan was devastated that I'd accused him of assault when we just had a misunderstanding." "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. The nurse said I didn't have to talk to anyone except the police. But Daddy," she left her card, "said when I was ready to discuss the situation, I should call her. That Jordan's family wanted to help with medical expenses and therapy costs if we could all move past this unfortunate incident." The offer was transparent in its intent by Grace's silence before the story gained traction. Slate had seen similar tactics in business dealings over the years. Wealthy clients offering quick payment to avoid official complaints about shoddy work or safety violations. "Did you take the card?" "I threw it away." "But Daddy, what if they're right? What if no one believes me? Jordan's popular. His father's important. I'm just..." "You're my daughter, and you matter more than every important person in this town combined." The words came out fiercer than intended. Grace flinched slightly, and he moderated his tone, fought to keep the fury directed where it belonged instead of spilling onto her. "We're going to handle this the right way. Legal. Through the system. I'm getting you a lawyer, a real one, not someone Jordan's family hired. And we're going to prosecute. Understand? Lawyers cost money. We can't afford..." "Let me worry about money. You focus on healing." A knock on the door interrupted them. Sheriff Danny Paulson entered still in uniform despite the early hour, looking like he'd pulled an all-nighter. Behind him came someone unexpected, a woman in her mid-40s wearing business casual and carrying a leather portfolio. Mr. Mercer, Grace, this is Linda Chen from the district attorney's office. She handles sexual assault cases. Linda Chen had Asian features softened by makeup that couldn't quite hide the exhaustion beneath. Her handshake was firm, professional, the grip of someone who'd shaken 1,000 hands and learned to convey confidence through pressure alone. Mr. Mercer, Grace, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. I've reviewed your case and I'd like to discuss next steps. You're filing charges. Chen's expression became carefully neutral. That's what I need to discuss. May I sit? She took the visitor's chair without waiting for permission, crossed her legs, opened the portfolio to reveal a legal pad covered in notes. Her pen clicked once, nervous habit or unconscious punctuation. Grace, I need to ask you some questions. They're going to be difficult and possibly upsetting, but I need you to answer as honestly as possible. Can you do that? Grace nodded, her hand finding slates and gripping tight. Tell me what happened last night. Start from when you got to the party. Grace's voice came out small but steady as she recounted the evening, arriving at Jason Thornton's house, around 8, hanging with friends, dancing one beer she'd nursed for 2 hours because she didn't like the taste. Around 11, her car wouldn't start. Dead battery or bad alternator, she wasn't sure. Jordan Hale had overheard, offered to drive her home. Had you interacted with Jordan before last night? At school, we had one class together junior year. He was always nice, polite. Everyone liked him. And last night when he offered the ride, you felt safe accepting? Yes, I mean, he's Jordan Hale, star quarterback, going to West Point. Why wouldn't I feel safe? Chen made notes, pen scratching paper. So you got in his truck. What happened then? Grace's recitation became clinical, detached, as if describing events that had happened to someone else. The drive out of town, Jordan taking a turn toward Marker's Point instead of town. Her confusion, then alarm as he parked, his hand on her thigh, her verbal refusals, his insistence that she owed him, that she'd led him on by accepting the ride, that girls like her knew what they wanted. The assault itself she described in spare detail, voice never wavering, but her grip on Slate's hand tightening until his circulation cut off. Jordan forcing her against the truck's bench seat, her fighting back, scratching, hitting. Him overpowering her through idea and strength. Pain, terror, his weight crushing her, the smell of his cologne mixed with sweat, his breath in her ear telling her to stop fighting, that she'd enjoy it if she relaxed. Afterwards, him driving her to the hospital access road in silence, stopping, ordering her out, driving away before she'd even closed the passenger door. Chen listened without interrupting, her pen recording everything. When Grace finished, the DA remained silent for a full minute, staring at her notes. Finally, Grace, I believe you. I want you to know that first and foremost. But I need to be honest about the challenges we're facing. Slate's chest tightened. Jordan Hale's family retained Marcus Pettigrew. He's one of the best defense attorneys in Montana. Expensive, aggressive. He's already filed motions to suppress the rape kit results, claiming chain of custody issues. He's arguing that without forensic evidence, this case is purely he said, she said. The bruises can be explained as rough consensual sex, according to their narrative. Pettigrew's going to argue that Grace regretted the encounter and fabricated assault claims out of embarrassment or spite. That's horse shit. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Mr. Mercer, I agree, but a jury might not. Jordan Hale has no criminal record. He's a model student, community service, church attendance. Character witnesses will line up to testify about his good nature. Meanwhile, and I'm sorry to be blunt, you have an assault conviction from 1975. Grace has had 2 prior sexual relationships according to medical records. Pettigrew will use all of that. So you're not filing charges. I didn't say that. I'm saying we need more. Witnesses who saw them leave together, text messages, anything that establishes lack of consent beyond reasonable doubt. Grace said no, repeatedly. That's lack of consent. It is, but it's also unprovable without corroborating evidence. Jordan will testify that Grace was enthusiastic, that she only claimed assault after he rejected her emotional advances post-sex. Grace made a wounded sound. Slate stood so abruptly, his chair fell backward, clattering against the linoleum. Get out. Chen blinked. Mr. Mercer, I said get out. You came here to tell us you are not going to prosecute because my daughter doesn't have enough proof that she was raped. Because Jordan Hale's family has a better lawyers. Get the fuck out of my daughter's room. Sheriff Danny moved between them, hands raised in placation. Ben, she's trying to help. By telling Grace she's not credible enough. By saying my past mistakes mean my daughter doesn't deserve justice. Chen stood gathering her portfolio with precise movements that suggested this wasn't her first hostile encounter. Mr. Mercer, I understand you're upset, but anger doesn't change the legal reality. I will file charges if you insist, but I'm trying to manage your expectations about the outcome. A trial will be brutal for Grace. Pettigrew will cross-examine her for hours. He'll question her sexual history, her judgment, her memory. He'll bring up every text message, every social media post. He'll try to destroy her credibility. And at the end of all that trauma, there's a significant chance Jordan Hale walks free. So we just let him get away with it. I'm suggesting you consider whether a trial is in Grace's best interest. The Hale family has offered a settlement. I know. Grace already told me. They want to buy our silence. Chen's lips pressed into a thin line. They're offering to pay all medical expenses and therapy costs, plus a financial settlement. It's not unusual in cases like this. Cases like this? You mean cases where rich kids rape poor girls and their families make the problem disappear with money? That's not what I think you should leave now, Ms. Chen, and you can tell the Hale family that my daughter isn't for sale. Chen's professional mask slipped, revealing something that might have been respect or sympathy. I'll file the charges. But Mr. Mercer, please reconsider. Not for the Hale's sake, for Grace's. She left her footsteps echoing down the hall. Danny remained, his expression troubled. Ben, she's not wrong about how hard this will be. I don't care. Grace does. Baby girl, look at me. Grace's head had dropped, hair curtaining her face. She looked up slowly, eyes red-rimmed and haunted. Do you want to go through a trial? Understanding what that means, what they'll do to your reputation. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. I want Jordan Hale to face what he did, even if it costs you everything. She turned to look at Slate, seeking guidance or permission or strength. He knelt beside the bed, ignoring his protesting knees, and took both her hands in his. Grace, I won't lie to you. A trial will be hell. They're going to attack you, make you relive the worst night of your life in front of strangers. Try to make you look like a liar, and at the end, Jordan might still walk free. Then why fight? Because if we don't, he does this to someone else. And because you'll know you stood up. You said this happened and it was wrong. That takes more courage than any battle I fought in Vietnam. What if we lose? Then we lose knowing we fought. And sometimes baby girl fighting is the victory, not winning. She processed this, her expression cycling through fear and doubt before settling on something harder. Okay, we fight. Danny's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his face going carefully blank. Ben, I need to talk to you, outside. They stepped into the hallway, leaving Grace with a nurse who'd arrived to check vitals. Danny waited until they were out of earshot before speaking. David Hale just filed for a restraining order. Against you. What? Claims you've been harassing his family, making threats. Judge Hampton signed it an hour ago. You're prohibited from coming within 500 feet of Jordan Hale or David Hale. I haven't been near them. Doesn't matter, it's filed. You violate it, you go to jail. And Grace loses her father while this case plays out. The tactical brilliance was obvious, neutralized Slate before he became a problem. Keep him away from Jordan, from witnesses, from anything that might help Grace's case. Isolate the family, make them easier to pressure into accepting the settlement. This is bullshit. It's smart, and it works. Ben, you need to be careful. One wrong move, and they'll use it against Grace. So I just sit back and let them destroy my daughter's life. You get a lawyer, you build a case, you do this right. With what money? I'm barely keeping the garage afloat. Medical bills are going to bury me. And you're talking about hiring lawyers who can go up against Marcus Pettigrew. Danny pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, held it up to show a name, Samuel Cohen. Judge Cohen, retired public defender. Handled more sexual assault cases than anyone in Montana. He owes me a favor from when his grandson got picked up for drunk driving, and I gave the kid a warning instead of charges. I'll call him. I can't accept charity. It's not charity. It's brotherhood. You'd do the same for me. The truth of that settled the argument. Slate would have mortgaged his soul if one of his friends needed help. Pride was luxury he couldn't afford. Okay, call him. His phone vibrated in his pocket. Text message from unknown number. Mr. Mercer, this is Hank Morrison. Ironclad. Danny gave me your number. Heard about Grace. The brothers are gathering at your garage. 6 a.m. We're here for you. Ironclad. The name pulled had memories from 50 years ago. A skinny kid from Iowa who'd arrived in Vietnam scared shitless and left 2 tours later harder than tungsten. They'd served in different units, but the same area of operations, their paths crossing during major offensives. After the war, Ironclad had drifted for years before settling in Copper Ridge, drawn by the mountains and the promise of solitude. They'd reconnected by chance at a VFW meeting 15 years ago, recognized each other despite decades of aging, and the friendship had resumed as if the intervening years had never happened. Slate checked the time, 5:45. The garage was 10 minutes away. The brothers would be arriving now, forming up without being asked, responding to crisis the way they'd been trained a lifetime ago. I need to go. Danny nodded. I'll stay with Grace until you get back. Ben, be smart about this. Don't give the Hales ammunition. The drive to Mercer's Motors felt like traveling through parallel dimensions. The town remained unchanged, same buildings, same streets, same early risers stopping for coffee at the diner, but Slate had been fundamentally altered. Yesterday he'd been a father, worried about college tuition and his daughter's future. Today he was a man planning war against people with resources and connections he couldn't match through conventional means. The garage sat on the eastern edge of Copper Ridge's commercial district, a squat metal building with bay doors and a small office. The sign out front read, Mercer's Motors, honest work, fair prices, in faded letters that needed repainting. 4 motorcycles already occupied the parking lot, their riders visible through the office window. Slate parked his truck, killed the engine, after a moment gathering himself. His hands shook slightly, adrenaline and exhaustion and fear combining. He was 64 years old. His body ached in ways that never quite resolved. His daughter had been raped, and the system seemed designed to protect her attacker. And now he was about to ask for help from men he saw once a month, 4 poker games and rare group rides. The office door opened before he could exit the truck. Hank Ironclad Morrison stood silhouetted against interior light, 6 feet of weathered veteran who'd aged into his nickname. His hair had gone white, but remained thick, pulled back in a ponytail that defied his 67 years. Scars marked his forearms from old wounds that predated their service. His eyes, still sharp, despite crow's feet, tracked Slate's approach with the assessing gaze of a man who'd spent a lifetime evaluating threats. They didn't speak. Ironclad simply pulled Slate into an embrace, the kind of hug that communicated everything words couldn't. Slate's control finally broke. His shoulders shook. His breath hitched. Ironclad held him through it, one hand on the back of his head, the other supporting his spine. We got you, brother. Whatever you need. Inside the garage office, 6 men had assembled. Slate knew them all, had ridden with them for years, but they'd become the 7 brothers only 5 years ago after Linda's death, when they'd shown up uninvited and stayed until Slate could function again. Eugene Doc Washington occupied the battered couch, his bulk testing the furniture's structural integrity. At 62, he'd maintained the physique of his Army medic days through genetics and stubbornness. His medical practice had evolved into a free clinic serving Copper Ridge's uninsured population work that kept him perpetually broke and perpetually satisfied. Raymond Wrench Kowalski hunched over the coffee maker, coaxing ancient machinery into producing something drinkable. His mechanical genius extended beyond motorcycles into any system of moving parts. The nickname had stuck since childhood, when he'd taken apart his father's car engine at age 9 and reassembled it better than factory specifications. Polish immigrant parents had instilled work ethic and suspicion of authority in equal measure. Thomas Preacher Hayes stood at the window staring out at dawn breaking over the mountains. At 69, he was oldest among them, carrying the weight of that seniority in the stoop of his shoulders. His ministry had ended 15 years ago when his son died in Iraq, and he'd stood before his congregation unable to offer comfort he didn't believe. The loss of faith had gutted him, but the loss of his son had done worse. Miguel Cisco Delgado cleaned his fingernails with a pocket knife, the gesture-nervous habit from 30 years in law enforcement. Early retirement had been forced after an officer-involved shooting deemed righteous by internal affairs, but morally ambiguous by his conscience. He'd put 3 rounds in a teenager holding a realistic toy gun, had watched the kid bleed out while backup arrived, had turned in his badge 6 months later, unable to trust his judgment. Samuel Judge Cohen reviewed documents spread across Slate's desk, reading glasses perched on his nose. His legal career had spanned 4 decades, most of it as an overworked public defender, representing people who couldn't afford better. Retirement meant consulting work and pro bono cases for clients who reminded him why he'd entered law in the first place. His wife had died 2 years ago, leaving him alone in a house too large for one person. Marcus Bear Thibodeau filled the office doorway, his bulk nearly blocking the morning light. Former longshoreman from Louisiana, he'd migrated north following construction work that dried up when his back gave out. The nickname referenced his size and his tendency toward protective aggression when people he cared about faced threats. He spoke with a Cajun accent that thickened when he was angry or drunk, both of which happened with regularity. They turned when Slate entered, faces showing variations of the same expression, controlled fury mixed with steady determination. Ironclad made introductions unnecessary. "We heard, all of us, and we're here, whatever you need. Money, time, muscle, you name it." Slate's throat tightened. He'd known these men for years, but had maintained the emotional distance of someone who'd lost too much to risk caring deeply. But crisis had stripped pretense and revealed what brotherhood truly meant. Grace was raped. Jordan Hale, councilman's son. He's claiming it was consensual. The temperature in the room dropped. Doc's expression went flat, the 1,000-yard stare of someone accessing old combat instincts. Wrench's hand stilled on the coffee pot. Preacher's head bowed as if in prayer he no longer believed. Cisco's knife closed with an audible snap. Judge removed his glasses slowly. Bear's massive hands clenched into fists capable of pulping bone. "Where is he?" Cisco's voice carried the dead calm of a man who'd killed before and would again if circumstances warranted. "Under protection. They filed a restraining order against me this morning. 500 feet. If I violate it, I go to jail." Smart. Judge's legal mind recognized the tactic immediately. Neutralize you before you become dangerous. Classic preemptive strike. DA saying she might not prosecute, not enough evidence. Jordan's got Marcus Pettigrew representing him. Pettigrew. Judge's tone suggested professional respect mixed with personal distaste. "He's expensive and effective. Never lost a sexual assault case in 20 years. Gets charges dismissed before trial or hammers witnesses so thoroughly juries acquit." "So what do we do?" Ironclad's question wasn't rhetorical. He genuinely wanted tactical assessment and plan of action. Slate looked at each of them in turn, seeing decades of experience and capability. Men who'd survived wars and personal tragedies and emerged harder, but not broken. Men who'd kill for each other without hesitation or regret. "I want to murder him. Jordan Hale. I want to find him alone somewhere and end him. That's what I want to do." Silence absorbed the admission. No one looked shocked or tried to talk him down. They understood. Every man in this room had contemplated violence, had enacted it, knew the seductive simplicity of solving problems through application of force. "But," Ironclad prompted, "but Grace needs her father, not a father in prison, and killing Jordan won't undo what happened. Won't make her whole. Might even make it worse knowing her trauma turned me into a murderer." Doc spoke up, his medic training asserting itself. "How's Grace doing physically?" "Bruised ribs, sprained wrist contusions. Doctor says she'll heal." And mentally, Slate's hands clenched. "Broken, scared, but still my daughter. She wants to fight, press charges, go to trial." Judge made notes on his legal pad. "Trial means discovery, depositions, cross-examination. Pettigrew will destroy her on the stand if we let him. But I know his tactics. I've faced him before. We can prepare Grace, make her unshakable. You'll represent her. Pro bono, this case matters, and Pettigrew needs someone to knock him down a few pegs." "I can't pay you." I'm not asking you to. Consider it my contribution to the cause. Wrench poured coffee into styrofoam cups, passed them around. The ritual provided structure, gave them something to do with their hands while minds processed information and formulated responses. What about investigation? Cisco's cop instincts surfaced. Sheriff doing his job. Danny's doing what he can, but he's constrained by politics. Hale's got the mayor's ear. Chief of police is dragging his feet on the investigation. So we investigate ourselves. Old-fashioned detective work. Talk to kids who were at the party. See if anyone saw something. Check Jordan's background for patterns. That could contaminate official investigation. Give Pettigrew ammunition for dismissal. Only if we're sloppy, I know how to work within boundaries. The planning continued, each man contributing expertise from his particular domain. Doc would coordinate Grace's medical care, ensure she got proper therapy, use his clinic connections to circumvent insurance obstacles. Wrench would keep the garage running to handle Slate's workload so he could focus on Grace. Preacher would provide emotional support. His loss made him uniquely qualified to sit with suffering without trying to fix it. Bear would handle logistics, make sure Slate and Grace had food and transportation, and whatever mundane necessities got forgotten during crisis. Ironclad would coordinate everything, acting as second in command when Slate couldn't think straight. What about money? The question came from Bear. Medical bills, lawyer fees, even if Judge works free, lost income. How you managing? I'm not. Grace's hospital stay will drain my savings. Garage barely breaks even most months. And now I'm taking time off to deal with this. We take up collection. Each of us contributes what we can. No shame in accepting help, Slate. That's what brothers do. The casual use of his old nickname, the one that hadn't been spoken in decades, broke through his remaining defenses. These men weren't just friends or casual acquaintances. They were brothers in the truest sense, bound by shared experience and mutual commitment to survive whatever life threw at them. I don't deserve this. Ironclad's response was immediate and absolute. Bullshit. You've earned this over 40 years of being solid, of showing up when we needed you, of keeping your word when it cost you. Don't insult us by pretending you're not worth our time. Okay, the single word carried weight of acceptance and gratitude. Planning continued through the morning, the strategies emerging from collective wisdom. They'd been warriors once. They'd been protectors of people and ideals. Age had slowed their bodies but sharpened their minds. And now they had purpose, and clarity of mission that had been missing since their respective retirements. Slate's phone rang at 8:30. Danny's number. Grace is asking for you. Doctor's discharging her today. You should be here when they do the paperwork. On my way. He stood joints protesting after hours of sitting. The seven brothers rose with him, silent acknowledgement that this meeting had concluded, but their commitment remained. Ironclad walked him to his truck. You're not alone in this. Remember that when it gets dark, when you're tempted to do something stupid. Call me any hour. I've talked you off ledges before. Yeah. I mean it, Ben. Don't make Linda watch you throw your life away from wherever she is. The invocation of his dead wife's name hit harder than intended. Linda had been the moral center of his life, the reason he'd stayed straight after that bar fight, the reminder that some things mattered more than pride or rage. She'd died believing he was better than his worst impulses. I won't. Promise me, on her memory, you won't do anything without talking to us first. I promise. The words felt like shackles and lifelines simultaneously. County General had transformed during his absence, morning shift, replacing night staff energy, picking up as the hospital approached full operation. Grace sat dressed in clothes Danny must have brought from the house, looking small and fragile in oversized sweatshirt and jeans. Her discharge papers lay on the bedside table requiring signature before she could leave. Ready to go home? She nodded, then hesitated. Daddy, I don't want to go to my room. Not yet. Can I stay with you in your room? The request transported him back 17 years to a 5-year-old, waking from nightmares and padding into his room seeking safety. He'd held her then while Linda slept, had rocked her until terror faded and she'd returned to her own bed. She was asking for that same security now, the promise that nothing could hurt her while he stood watch. Of course, stay as long as you need. They completed the discharge process in silence, Grace clinging to his arm as they navigated hallways and elevators. Outside, morning sunlight, her eyes adjusted to hospital lighting. She flinched at the brightness, at the normalcy of the world continuing, despite her trauma. The drive home took 20 minutes, neither speaking, radio off, just the rumble of his truck's engine and the whistle of wind through windows cracked for ventilation. Grace stared at landscape, passing, her expression distant. At the house, she moved directly to his bedroom, crawled under the covers, fully dressed, pulled Linda's old pillow, the one Slate had never washed, never replaced, against her chest. "Sleep, baby girl. I'll be right outside if you need me." She was unconscious before he finished speaking, trauma and exhaustion claiming their due. Slate retreated to the kitchen, made coffee he didn't want, stood at the window overlooking his small backyard. The garden Linda had tended so carefully had gone feral after her death weeds choking what had been flowers. He'd meant to maintain it, to honor her memory through cultivation, but work and single parenting had consumed time, and the garden had suffered. His phone accumulated texts through the morning, judge confirming he'd filed notice of representation with the DA's office. Cisco reporting initial investigation revealed no witnesses at the party willing to speak on record, Doc arranging therapy appointments with a trauma specialist, Bear delivering groceries Slate hadn't asked for but desperately needed. By noon, exhaustion hit with the force of physical impact. He'd been awake 30 hours running on adrenaline and fury that had burned out, leaving only ash. He collapsed on the couch, intending to rest his eyes for 10 minutes. The nightmare arrived with cinematic clarity. Grace running through jungle that shifted to Montana mountains. Jordan Hale's face superimposed over enemy soldiers. Linda calling from somewhere unseen, asking why he hadn't protected their daughter. He woke gasping, disoriented, his left hand throbbing from arthritis aggravated by stress. The clock showed 4:15. 5 hours had vanished. Grace remained in his room, her soft snoring audible through the open door. The house felt oppressive, walls pressing inward. He needed air, needed space to think. He grabbed his jacket, left a note in case Grace woke, stepped outside into afternoon sun that was already beginning its descent toward evening. The garage called to him, familiar refuge where problems could be solved through application of skill and patience. His current project, a 1967 Mustang restoration, occupied bay, two-engine partially disassembled, surrounded by catalog parts. Working with his hands always brought clarity, the methodical nature of mechanical repair, imposing order on chaos. He'd been there an hour, hands deep in the Mustang's engine compartment, when gravel crunched in the parking lot. A black BMW pulled up, expensive and out of place in this working-class neighborhood. The driver emerged, mid-50s gray suit that probably cost more than Slate's monthly gross, perfectly styled hair, despite the wind. Slate straightened, wiped his hands on a rag that left them only marginally cleaner. The man approached with the confidence of someone accustomed to intimidating through presence alone. "Benjamin Mercer." "Who's asking?" "Marcus Pettigrew. I represent Jordan Hale. I believe you know why I'm here." Slate's first instinct was violence. The impulse traveled from brain to fist before conscious thought could intervene. 40 years of conditioning that said threats got neutralized, enemies got eliminated, problems got solved through application of overwhelming force. His hands clenched around the wrench he'd been using, knuckles whitening the tool, becoming weapon in the space of a heartbeat. Then Linda's voice, ghost memory from 5 years dead. "You're better than this." He set the wrench down with deliberate care. Marcus Pettigrew tracked the movement, his expression revealing nothing except maybe the faintest hint of satisfaction. He'd seen the rage, had measured, it was probably already planning how to use it. "Mr. Mercer, I understand emotions are running high, but I'm not here to antagonize you. I'm here to have a civilized conversation about a very unfortunate situation." "Unfortunate situation?" Slate's voice came out flat, controlled. "That's what you're calling the rape of my daughter." Pettigrew's face remained professionally neutral, the expression of a man who'd weathered worse accusations without flinching. "That's the allegation, yes. My client maintains the encounter was consensual, but I'm not here to argue the facts. I'm here because both our clients, and yes, Grace is as much a client of the justice system as Jordan, would benefit from resolving this matter quietly." "Quietly? You mean making it disappear?" "I mean avoiding a trial that will traumatize everyone involved. Mr. Mercer, may I be frank? You're on my property uninvited. You've got about 30 seconds before I call Sheriff Paulson and have you removed for violating the restraining order your client filed against me." Pettigrew smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. The restraining order prohibits you from approaching Jordan or David Hale. It says nothing about me approaching you. And I suspect you won't call the sheriff because you want to hear what I have to say. The accuracy stung. Slate did want to hear this, needed to understand the enemy's position, their strategy, their weaknesses. Sun Tzu wisdom from a paperback some lieutenant had passed around in Vietnam: know your enemy. Talk fast. Pettigrew pulled a leather folder from his BM and extracted a document. His movements were precise, economical, the gestures of someone who billed by the hour and wasted nothing. The Hale family is prepared to offer a settlement. All medical expenses related to the incident, therapy costs for 5 years, and a cash payment of $250,000. In exchange, Grace withdraws her allegations and signs a non-disclosure agreement. The number hung in the air like smoke: $250,000, more money than Slate had earned in the last 5 years combined. Enough to pay off the mortgage, send Grace to college debt-free, maybe finally retire instead of working until his body gave out completely. Blood money, payment for silence while a rapist walked free. No. Mr. Mercer, I don't think you understand the full scope of what you're refusing. A trial means Grace's entire life gets examined. Every text message, every social media post, every past relationship, every moment of poor judgment, and we all have them, gets magnified and used to destroy her credibility. She's telling the truth. Truth is subjective in sexual assault cases. It becomes about who the jury believes. And juries tend to believe young men from good families with spotless records over— He paused, pretended to consult his notes. Over the daughters of mechanics with criminal histories. The dig was intentional, calculated to provoke. Slate recognized the tactic. Pettigrew wanted him angry, wanted him to lash out, wanted evidence of the violent ex-con to present to judges and juries. My past has nothing to do with what Jordan Hale did to my daughter. Doesn't it? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as they say. A father with impulse control problems, a history of violence. It's not unreasonable to wonder if the daughter might share those tendencies. Fabricating assault allegations out of regret or spite certainly requires a degree of moral flexibility. Slate's vision narrowed. The garage receded. Pettigrew's face filled his awareness with crystalline clarity. He could see the subtle tells: the lawyer's elevated pulse visible in his neck, the slight tension in his shoulders despite the confident posture, the way his weight had shifted onto the balls of his feet, ready to retreat if necessary. Pettigrew knew he was in danger, was counting on Slate's self-control, was betting that 40 years of discipline would override 40 years of rage. You need to leave, Mr. Mercer. Now, before I do something we'll both regret, or rather something you'll regret, I'll sleep just fine. The mask cracked, just for a second. Pettigrew's professional neutrality slipped and revealed the predator underneath the man who'd built a career destroying victims on witness stands, who'd made millions ensuring wealthy criminals face no consequences. If you assault me, I'll have you arrested, and Grace will go through this alone. If I assault you, they won't find enough pieces to arrest. Now get off my property. Pettigrew retreated toward his BMW, movements controlled but hasty. At the driver's door, he paused, looked back. The settlement offer expires in 72 hours. After that, we go to trial. And Mr. Mercer, I've never lost a sexual assault case. Never. Your daughter will be my 27th victory. Think about what that means for her. The BMW's engine purred to life, expensive machinery in perfect tune. Slate watched until the taillights disappeared around the corner, then stood in the empty parking lot as afternoon bled into evening. His hands shook. Adrenaline dump post-confrontation crash. He'd come within seconds of destroying everything his freedom Grace's case, any hope of justice. Pettigrew had known exactly which buttons to push, had played him like a maestro conducting violence. But he hadn't broken, hadn't given them ammunition. The small victory felt hollow. His phone buzzed. Text from Ironclad Brothers, meeting tonight. 8 p.m., your place, mandatory. They arrived in sequence, motorcycles rumbling up the driveway like distant thunder. By 7:45, all six sat in Slate's living room, occupying furniture and floor space with the comfortable sprawl of men accustomed to each other's presence. Grace remained in the bedroom, door closed. She'd woken around 6, emerged long enough to eat half a sandwich Doc had brought, then retreated again into the fortress of blankets in Linda's pillow. Slate had knocked twice to check on her. Both times she'd murmured she was fine without opening the door. Ironclad distributed beers from a cooler Bear had hauled in. Nobody protested the early start. This wasn't social drinking. This was the ritual preparation warriors had practiced since humans first gathered around fires to plan hunts and wars. Marcus Pettigrew came to the garage today. Slate recounted the conversation word for word, tone for tone. The brothers listened without interruption, their faces hardening as the story progressed. When he finished, Cisco spoke first. That's witness intimidation, threatening you with trial outcomes to force settlement. I could arrest him for that. Could you, or would it get tossed because technically he was just explaining legal realities? Probably the latter. Pettigrew's smart, stays just on the legal side of every line. Judge had been making notes, his legal pad filling with observations and strategies. The settlement offer is actually valuable intelligence. $250,000 means they're worried. If this was truly open and shut consensual encounter, they'd fight. Offering money means they know Jordan's vulnerable. Or they're just rich enough that throwing money at problems is cheaper than uncertainty, Wrench countered. Maybe, but I've faced Pettigrew before. He doesn't settle when he thinks he'll win. His reputation depends on courtroom victories. This offer suggests weakness. What kind of weakness? Slate leaned forward, hope flickering despite his exhaustion. Could be evidence we don't know about yet. Could be Jordan has a pattern they're trying to keep hidden. Could be David Hale's political career can't survive the publicity even if Jordan's acquitted. Cisco, what did your investigation turn up? The former cop pulled a small notebook, flipped pages. Talked to 6 kids who were at the party. Nobody saw Grace leave with Jordan directly, but 2 remembered seeing them talking by the cars. One girl, Sarah Martinez, said Jordan gave her bad vibes, but couldn't articulate why. Another kid, Brian Thompson, mentioned Jordan had been drinking heavily, more than his usual. That's good for us, right? Intoxication, impaired judgment. Actually, no. Pettigrew will use that to support the consensual narrative. 2 drunk teenagers made a mistake, now one regrets it. Plus, the rape kit showed Jordan's blood alcohol was borderline legal. Grace had trace amounts from that one beer. Not enough to claim incapacitation on either side. Doc interjected, his medical background asserting itself. Talked to the ER doctor who examined Grace. Off the record, he said the injuries were consistent with forcible rape. Defensive wounds on her hands, bruising pattern on her thighs and upper arms indicating that she was held down. But on the record, he has to acknowledge those injuries could theoretically occur during rough consensual sex. Theoretically, Slate's voice dripped contempt. I know, but could theoretically is enough to create reasonable doubt. That's all Pettigrew needs. Preacher had been silent until now, his weathered face reflecting internal deliberation. I've been thinking about this from Grace's perspective, not the legal angles or the tactical considerations, just her. A 17-year-old girl who got raped and now faces years of having that trauma dissected in public. Is a trial really what's best for her? The room went quiet. The question everyone had been avoiding spoken aloud by the man whose own loss gave him authority to ask it. Slate's jaw tightened. She said she wants to fight. She's 17, traumatized, angry. She might not fully understand what fighting means. So I should decide for her, tell her to take the money and bury this. I'm saying you should make sure she understands before you commit her to years of hell. She already committed, in the hospital. She looked me in the eye and said she wanted Jordan Hale to face what he did. And if she changes her mind, the question hung unanswered. Slate didn't want to contemplate Grace backing down, accepting defeat, letting Jordan walk away with nothing more than an inconvenient settlement payment. Ironclad redirected the conversation with veteran efficiency. We need evidence. Something that proves force. Cisco, you said Grace scratched Jordan, drew blood. That's what she told the police, but Jordan lawyered up immediately. Wouldn't submit to examination. By the time Sheriff got a warrant, 24 hours had passed. Any scratches could have healed or been explained away. What about his truck, crime scene processing? Hale family had it detailed the next morning. Professional job, not just a car wash. Eliminated any potential DNA evidence. That's obstruction. It's wealthy people being cautious. And technically, Jordan had a right to clean his vehicle. No crime scene had been officially designated at that point. Judge made another note. Actually, the timing of that detail could work in our favor. Suggest consciousness of guilt. Why deep clean your truck unless you're trying to hide evidence? Pettigrew will argue cleanliness isn't guilt, that the Hales maintain their vehicles meticulously, that this was routine maintenance, not evidence destruction. The circular logic was maddening. Every avenue seemed blocked by money and lawyers, and a system designed to protect people like the Hales. Bear spoke up, his Cajun accent thickening with frustration. So what you're telling me is this rich boy can rape Slate's daughter, lawyer up, destroy evidence, and walk away clean because he got the right last name? That's what I'm saying, yes. That's bullshit. It's America. Silence settled heavy and oppressive. 7 men who'd spent their lives believing in justice, flawed and imperfect, but ultimately attainable, confronted the reality that wealth could purchase immunity from consequence. Wrench broke the deadlock. We're thinking about this wrong. We're playing their game by their rules, but we've got resources they don't. Such as, we're invisible. Old men, veterans, mechanics, and doctors and retired cops. Nobody sees us as threats. We can investigate without triggering legal alarms. Cisco shook his head. Anything we find gets tainted by improper collection. Can't use it in court. Who says we're collecting for court? Maybe we're collecting for other purposes. The implication was clear. Evidence that couldn't help Grace legally might help her father extra-legally. Wrench was suggesting they gather intelligence for vigilante action. Slate felt the old temptation rising. The seductive simplicity of direct action. Find Jordan Hale alone. Extract confession or justice or vengeance. The terms became interchangeable when filtered through rage. Judge's voice cut through the fantasy. Ben promised he wouldn't do anything without talking to us first. So let's talk. What happens if you kill Jordan Hale? The blunt question snapped focus back to reality. I go to prison. For how long? Life probably. First-degree murder. Premeditated. My history will eliminate any sympathy. And Grace loses her father on top of everything else. And Jordan's family probably uses my crime to destroy Grace's reputation, makes her the daughter of a murderer, validates their narrative that she's from a violent, unstable family. So murdering Jordan helps exactly no one and hurts everyone. We agreed on that. Slate nodded reluctantly. Then we focus on legal victory, which means building a case Pettigrew can't dismantle. How? By finding other victims. The suggestion sparked immediate interest. Cisco leaned forward. You think Jordan's done this before? Pettigrew doesn't settle cases he thinks he'll win. The offer suggests pattern evidence they're worried about. We find other girls Jordan assaulted suddenly. This isn't he said, she said. It's pattern predator. But those girls didn't report. If they had, there'd be a record. They didn't report because of exactly what Grace is facing. The Hale family's influence. Fear of not being believed. Social consequences. But maybe if they see someone else standing up, they'll find courage to add their voices. It made tactical sense. Strength in numbers. 1 victim could be discredited, dismissed. 5 victims became undeniable pattern. How do we find them? Cisco smiled, the expression carrying dark humor. I'm still a cop at heart. I know how to investigate. And I've got friends who owe me favors. We start with Jordan's history. High school records, social media, talk to kids off the record. Build a profile. Find the cracks. That could take months. Then we work fast. Doc raised a practical concern. What about Grace in the meantime? Trauma therapy isn't optional. She needs professional help immediately. Already arranged. Doc pulled out a business card. Dr. Sarah Chen, trauma specialist, works with sexual assault survivors. First appointments Monday morning. I can't afford. Already handled. Pro bono. Sarah's a friend. She'll bill insurance where possible, waive the rest. The efficiency of their support was overwhelming. Slate had spent 40 years being self-sufficient, solving his own problems, never asking for help. But the brothers had taken his burden and distributed it across 7 sets of shoulders until it became manageable. His throat tightened. Words seemed inadequate. Ironclad understood without explanation. "We're family, Ben. This is what family does." A sound from the hallway broke the moment. Grace stood in the doorway, sweatshirt hanging loose on her frame hair, tangled from sleep. She'd been crying recently. Her eyes were red-rimmed and swollen. "I heard voices." The brothers stood as one, a show of respect that wasn't conscious decision, all but ingrained habit. Grace's gaze swept across them, taking in these men her father had known for years, but whom she'd only met occasionally at cookouts and holiday gatherings. "You're here for us, for me." It wasn't a question. She understood instantly what their presence meant. Ironclad stepped forward, his weathered face gentle despite his bulk. "Yes, ma'am, whatever you need, however long it takes." Grace's composure cracked. She'd been holding herself together through force of will, but kindness from unexpected quarters dissolved her defenses. She crossed to Slate, buried her face in his chest, and sobbed. The brothers averted their eyes, giving her privacy in the only way possible in the cramped living room. They'd all seen trauma, had carried their own scars, understood that witness to grief required respect and discretion. When Grace's tears subsided, she pulled back, wiped her face with her sleeve. "I want to fight. I know what you're all thinking, that maybe I should take the money and move on. But I can't. If I let Jordan get away with this, he'll do it to someone else. And I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I could have stopped him." Preacher's expression shifted, something like pride replacing his earlier doubt. "That takes courage, Grace. More than most people have." "I'm terrified." "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's moving forward despite it." She turned to Judge. "You're my lawyer. If you'll have me." "Can we win?" Judge's hesitation was brief but honest. "I don't know, but I promise you this Marcus Pettigrew will earn every penny of his obscene fee. And win or lose, Jordan Hale will know he was in a fight. That's enough." She looked at each of them in turn, these men who had volunteered for a war that wasn't theirs. "Thank you, all of you. I don't know how to repay," Ironclad cut her off gently. "No debts among family. You just focus on healing. Let us handle the rest." The meeting continued another hour, strategies, refined, tasks assigned. Cisco would investigate Jordan's history quietly using old contacts and careful inquiry. Doc would coordinate Grace's therapy and medical care. Wrench would keep the garage running and maintain Slate's income stream. Bear would handle logistics, food transportation, whatever practical needs arose. Preacher would provide emotional support, his experience with profound loss, making him qualified counselor. Judge would build the legal case, preparing for trial while hoping for leverage that made trial unnecessary. And Slate, he would be Grace's father, her anchor, her proof that she wasn't alone in this fight. By 10 p.m., they dispersed, motorcycles rumbling into the night with promises to reconvene in 48 hours. Slate walked Grace back to the bedroom, tucked her in like he'd done when she was small. "Daddy?" "Yeah, baby girl. I'm glad Mom isn't here to see this. It would break her heart. Your mom was stronger than you think. She survived me at my worst. She could handle anything. I miss her." "Me too." He sat on the edge of the bed, holding Grace's hand until sleep claimed her. Then he retreated to the living room, too wired for rest despite his exhaustion. His phone showed missed calls from numbers he didn't recognize. Probably reporters. News of a potential sexual assault case involving a councilman's son would attract media attention. He'd have to deal with that eventually, but not tonight. The bottle of whiskey still sat on its high shelf, calling with old promises. 5 years sober, 5 years of proving he could face life's difficulties without chemical assistance. But God, he was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of carrying burdens that seemed designed to crush him. Linda's voice again, memory instead of ghost. "You're better than this, Ben. You've always been better than this." He left the bottle untouched. Monday morning arrived with Montana autumn beauty mountains sharp against azure sky aspens, beginning their transformation to gold air, crisp with the promise of coming winter. The world continued its indifferent beauty while Grace prepared for her first therapy session. She emerged from the bathroom wearing jeans and a hoodie that swallowed her frame armor against the world. Her hair hung loose, obscuring the worst of the bruising on her face, but nothing could hide the haunted look in her eyes. "You don't have to do this today. We can reschedule." "No, I need to start somewhere." Dorsera Chen's office occupied the second floor of a renovated Victorian house on Copper Ridge's residential edge. The waiting room was designed for comfort, soft lighting, comfortable furniture, abstract art that didn't demand interpretation. A receptionist who looked young enough to be in high school greeted them with practiced warmth. "Grace Mercer, Dr. Chen's ready for you. Dad, you're welcome to wait here." Grace squeezed his hand once, then disappeared through an interior door. Slate settled into a chair that was actually comfortable, surrounded by magazines he had no interest in reading. 45 minutes passed, an hour, 90 minutes. He'd begun to worry when the interior door opened and Grace emerged, eyes red, but expression calmer than when she'd entered. Dr. Chen followed her out, a woman in her early 40s with kind eyes and the confident bearing of someone comfortable with human suffering. "Mr. Mercer, could I speak with you briefly?" Grace nodded permission. Slate followed the doctor into an office furnished with the same therapeutic minimalism as the waiting room. "How is she?" "Exactly where you'd expect someone with her trauma to be. Scared, angry, grieving the loss of safety she'd taken for granted. But Grace is resilient. She'll need time and support, but I believe she'll heal." "How long?" "Impossible to say. Trauma recovery isn't linear. Some days will be better than others. But Mr. Mercer, I need to stress something. You can't fix this for her as much as you want to, and I can see how desperately you do. This is Grace's journey. Your job is to be present, supportive, and patient. That's all. That's everything. Don't underestimate how powerful your presence is." They scheduled twice-weekly sessions extending months into the future. The receptionist processed insurance information with practiced efficiency, mentioning casually that Dr. Chen had already applied her professional discount. In the truck, Grace stared out the window at passing scenery. She asked if I'd considered the settlement offer. Slate's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What did you tell her?" "That money doesn't fix rape, that I'd rather be poor and know I fought than rich and know I gave up." "And what did she say?" "That both choices are valid, that there's no right answer." But I could tell she approved of fighting. They drove in silence for several minutes before Grace spoke again. "The lawyer came to the hospital. Pettigrew. He tried to talk to me." "When, Saturday morning before you arrived. He was smooth, professional. Said he just wanted to understand my perspective, that Jordan was devastated by my accusations, that perhaps we'd both misread the situation and with clearer heads could find a resolution." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to go fuck himself." Despite everything, Slate smiled. "That's my girl." Then he changed tactics, got aggressive, said if I insisted on pressing charges, he'd destroy me on the stand, that he'd make me wish I'd never been born. The smile disappeared. Rage flooded back, hot and immediate. "He threatened you directly." "Not threatened, warned. There's apparently a legal distinction." "Grace, why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because I knew how you'd react, and I can't have you in jail, Daddy. I need you here." She was right, which made it worse. Pettigrew had known exactly what he was doing, terrorizing a trauma victim, while her father wasn't present to intervene, secure in his legal immunity. "Did anyone witness this conversation?" "The nurse was in and out, but she didn't hear the details." "Still Pettigrew accessing you without your lawyer present while you were hospitalized and vulnerable. Judge can use that." "Will it matter?" The question cut deep because the answer was uncertain. Would judicial outrage at Pettigrew's tactics matter more than Jordan Hale's family connections? Would professional consequences follow? Or would the legal establishment protect its own, "I don't know, baby girl, but we're building evidence, piece by piece, and eventually we'll have enough"? What if we don't? He'd been avoiding this question, hoping she wouldn't ask. But Grace deserved honesty. Then we lose in court, Jordan walks free, and we live with that knowledge. And then what? The vigilante fantasy whispered its seduction. Jordan Hale alone in the dark. Justice delivered through means the legal system couldn't sanction, but that Slate's skills made possible. But he'd made a promise. To Linda's memory. To his daughter. To the brothers who trusted him to stay on the right side of the line that separated civilization from chaos. Then we find other ways to fight. Legal ways. We make Jordan's life difficult. We support other victims if they come forward. We ensure everyone knows what he is, even if the law won't touch him. That doesn't feel like enough. I know, but it has to be. They arrived home to find Cisco waiting on the porch, his expression carrying news. Found something. You're going to want to hear this. Inside, Cisco pulled out his notebook, flipped to recent entries. Jordan Hale has a history, nothing prosecuted, nothing official, but whispers, rumors. I talked to a girl named Emma Rodriguez. She graduated last year, now attending college in Bozeman. 3 years ago at a party, Jordan got aggressive with her, grabbed her inappropriately. She pushed him away, he called her a tease and walked off. That's not rape. No, but it's pattern. And it gets better or worse depending on perspective. Emma mentioned another girl, Ashley Brennan. Ashley's still in Copper Ridge working at her family's restaurant. Cisco's expression darkened. Ashley wouldn't talk to me directly, but her sister did. 2 years ago, Jordan assaulted Ashley. Similar circumstances, party offered ride home, took her to Marker's Point, forced himself on her. Grace's breath caught. Slate's vision sharpened, tunnel focus on Cisco's face. Why didn't Ashley report? Same reasons Grace almost didn't. Hale family influence, fear of not being believed. Ashley's family are immigrants. She was worried about drawing attention that might impact their legal status. Jordan's father made some calls after the incident. Nothing overt, but suddenly the Brennan's restaurant passed health inspections. They'd previously failed, their liquor license got renewed without the usual complications. Hush money through regulatory manipulation. Exactly. The Brennans understood the message. Keep quiet, things stay smooth. Make noise, problems arise. Will Ashley testify? She's terrified, but her sister thinks she might if she knows she's not alone. If Grace goes public, Ashley might find courage to add her voice. Judge would call this exactly what they needed: pattern evidence. One victim could be discredited. Two victims created doubt. Three or more became undeniable predator behavior. We need to talk to Ashley. Carefully. If Pettigrew finds out we're contacting other potential victims, he'll cry witness tampering. We need Judge to handle this properly. Grace had been listening silently, her expression cycling through emotions Slate couldn't quite read. Ashley was 2 years ago. That means Jordan has been doing this for at least 2 years. How many other girls? The question hung unanswered. How many victims had Jordan Hale created? How many families had the Hales silenced through money or intimidation or regulatory pressure? We'll find them. Cisco's voice carried absolute certainty. Every victim, every incident. We'll document everything. And when we're done, Marcus Pettigrew's perfect record is going to shatter. After Cisco left, Grace retreated to the bedroom. Slate found her an hour later sitting on the floor, laptop open, scrolling through social media. What are you doing? Research. If Jordan assaulted other girls, there might be hints, posts about trauma, warnings to friends, something. Grace, that's not your job. Let Cisco and Judge handle. It's my rape, my case, my life that got destroyed. I'm not sitting back while everyone else fights for me. The fierce determination in her voice reminded him of Linda. His wife had possessed that same stubborn refusal to be sidelined, that insistence on participating in battles that affected her life. Okay, but be careful. Don't contact anyone directly. Don't post anything about the case. Pettigrew's monitoring social media, guaranteed. I know. I'm not stupid. He started to leave, then paused. Baby girl, I'm proud of you. Your strength, your courage. Your mom would be proud too. Thanks, Daddy. The honorific still carried weight of childhood trust. As long as she called him that, some part of her remained his little girl. The thought brought comfort and heartbreak in equal measure. His phone rang, unknown number. Against his better judgment, he answered. Mr. Mercer. This is Karen Hale, Jordan's mother. I was hoping we could talk. The voice carried upper-class refinement, the accent of someone who'd spent time in private schools and country clubs. But underneath, Slate detected something else, exhaustion perhaps, or fear. I have nothing to say to you. Please, just 5 minutes. Mother to father, not through lawyers, just us. The request was unexpected enough that curiosity overrode anger. Talk. Not over the phone. Can we meet somewhere neutral? The coffee shop on Main, perhaps. Every instinct screamed trap. But Slate had survived Vietnam by understanding when to take calculated risks. Tomorrow, noon. And Mrs. Hale, I'm bringing someone. Of course, thank you, Mr. Mercer. The call ended. Slate stood holding the phone, wondering what game was being played and whether he'd just made a tactical error that would cost everything. Outside, autumn darkness had fallen. Inside, his daughter researched her own assault, while Slate planned strategy for a war where the rules kept changing and the enemy held every advantage except one grace's truth and the men willing to fight for it. The coffee shop on Main Street occupied a converted storefront that had been in sequence over 40 years, a hardware store, a bookshop, and briefly, a failed attempt at a sushi restaurant before current owners transformed it into Copper Ridge's approximation of urban cafe culture. Slade arrived 15 minutes early with Judge Cohen, who'd insisted on accompanying him after hearing about Karen Hale's call. This could be legitimate outreach or elaborate trap, Judge had warned during the drive. Either way, you don't meet alone. They took a corner booth with clear sight lines to both entrances. Judge ordered coffee he didn't want. Slate stared at the menu without reading it, his mind cycling through scenarios and contingencies. Karen Hale arrived precisely at noon punctuality, suggesting military precision or anxiety-driven control. She was mid-40s, attractive in the maintained way of wealthy women who had time and money for personal trainers and salon appointments. Her clothes were expensive, but understated tailored pants, cashmere sweater, minimal jewelry. But her eyes carried the same haunted quality Slate had seen in Grace's face trauma signature. She spotted them, hesitated fractionally, then approached with determined steps. Mr. Mercer, thank you for meeting me. Her voice matched the phone call, cultured, controlled, but with hairline cracks suggesting the control cost effort. Mrs. Hale, this is Samuel Cohen, my attorney. Her expression flickered, surprise or disappointment, hard to read. I was hoping we could speak privately. Lawyers are how we communicate now. Your husband and son made that choice. She slid into the booth across from them, hands folded on the table. Up close, her makeup couldn't quite conceal the circles under her eyes or the tension lines around her mouth. I suppose that's fair. May I order something? Judge gestured permission. She ordered herbal tea from a server who recognized her and didn't bother hiding the contempt in her fake smile. News traveled fast in small towns. Everyone knew about the case by now. The server's loyalty had already been chosen. Karen waited until the tea arrived before speaking. Mr. Mercer, I'm not here representing my husband or our lawyer. I'm here as a mother who's deeply troubled by what I've learned. What you've learned? Slate's voice carried dangerous flatness. You mean that your son is a rapist? She flinched but didn't retreat. I mean that I've discovered things about Jordan that horrify me. Patterns I should have seen. Warning signs I ignored or explained away because he's my son, and mothers want to believe the best about their children. Judge leaned forward slightly, lawyer instincts engaged. Mrs. Hale, I need to advise you that anything you say could be used in legal proceedings. Are you sure you want to continue this conversation without your attorney present? I'm sure, because I'm done protecting someone who doesn't deserve protection. Slate's pulse quickened. This wasn't what he'd expected. Karen Hale looked like a woman preparing to detonate her own life. What did you find? She reached into her purse, pulled out a phone, not her regular phone, Slate noted, but a cheap burner. She unlocked it, navigated to a folder, turned the screen toward them. Text messages, dozens of them. Conversations between Jordan and his friends bragging about conquests, with language that made Slate's hands clench. Photos of girls at parties unconscious or impaired with captions suggesting what had been done or what Jordan planned to do. Where did you get these? Jordan's old phone. He upgraded 6 months ago, left the old one in a drawer. I found it yesterday while cleaning his room. The messages go back 3 years. Judge was already taking notes, his legal mind processing implications. Mrs. Hale, this is potentially critical evidence. But how you obtained it matters. Did you have permission to access Jordan's phone? He's 18 but lives in my house. I don't need permission to clean his room or examine belongings left in common areas. That's debatable legally, but we can work with it. May I see? She handed over the phone. Judge scrolled through messages, his expression darkening with each screen. There are at least 5 different girls mentioned here. Specific incidents, dates, locations. This is, he paused, choosing words carefully. This is evidence of serial predation. Karen's composure cracked. Tears welled but didn't fall. My son is a monster. I raised a monster, and I didn't see it because I didn't want to see it. Why are you showing us this? Slate asked. Why not destroy it? Protect your son like your husband's been doing. Because I have a daughter too. Rebecca. She's 13. And last night I found myself wondering what kind of world I'm creating for her if I teach her that men like her brother face no consequences. What kind of mother lets boys become predators to protect family reputation? The raw honesty was almost painful to witness. Slate understood the cost of what Karen was doing, choosing justice over family truth, over comfort. Your husband doesn't know you're here. David would have me committed if he knew. He's convinced Jordan is the victim of a vindictive girl trying to trap him. That the Mercer family is attempting extortion. He spent the last week coordinating with Pettigrew to destroy Grace's credibility. And you, what do you believe? Karen met his eyes directly. I believe my son raped your daughter. And I believe he's done it before. And I believe if I don't stop him now, he'll do it again. So I'm here to help you, whatever you need. Judge's legal training reasserted itself. Mrs. Hale, I need you to understand what you're offering. Testifying against your own son in a criminal trial, the destruction of your marriage, social ostracism, your husband's political career ending, and him blaming you. Rebecca growing up with all of that. Are you prepared for those consequences? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Slate had hated Karen Hale, abstractly lumping her together with David and Jordan and Pettigrew as part of the enemy. But watching her sit across from him, shoulders squared despite fear making the hardest choice a parent could make, he felt something shift. Grace needs to hear this. Will you tell her directly, if she'll listen? One more thing, Judge interjected. This phone, we need to preserve it as evidence. Chain of custody, forensic analysis, the whole procedure. Are you willing to turn it over to law enforcement? Karen hesitated. If I do that, David will know. He'll move to block it legally, claim spousal privilege or improper seizure or something. Probably, but without proper procedures, the defense will get it excluded from trial. Then what good does it do? A slow smile crossed Judge's weathered face. It does something better than trial evidence. It gives us leverage. The emergency meeting at Slate's house that evening assembled all 7 brothers, plus Grace, who'd insisted on being present. Karen Hale sat slightly apart, still processing the magnitude of her betrayal of family loyalty. Judge had spent the afternoon consulting with Sheriff Paulson and District Attorney Chen, building strategy around Karen's evidence. Now he stood before the assembled group like a general briefing troops before battle. Here's our situation. Karen's evidence is damning but potentially inadmissible, depending on how aggressively Pettigrew fights it. However, it's given us names. 5 girls mentioned specifically in Jordan's messages. Cisco's already tracking them down. Cisco nodded confirmation. Found 3 so far. Emma Rodriguez we already knew about. New ones are Michelle Porter and Jessica Yang. Both graduated from Copper Ridge High in the last 3 years. Both have agreed to speak with us confidentially. What about the other 2? Still searching. Jordan used nicknames in some messages. Red and Butterfly. We're working on identifying them. Grace spoke up from her position beside Slate. I might know who Butterfly is. There's a girl senior year always wore these butterfly hair clips. Tessa Brighton. She transferred to private school in Billings last year. Middle of junior year, no explanation. That fits the timeline in Jordan's messages. Cisco made notes. I'll track her down. But a preacher raised a concern. We're talking about asking traumatized girls to relive their assaults publicly, to put themselves through exactly what Grace is facing. That's a heavy burden. It is, Judge agreed, but it's also the path to justice. 1 victim Pettigrew can destroy. 6 victims create a pattern no jury can ignore. Doc had been examining Karen's burner phone, his medical background making him attentive to detail. Some of these messages mention drugs, Rohypnol, GHB. If Jordan was drugging girls, that escalates the charges significantly. Do we have proof of drugging? Not yet, but if we can get toxicology results from past incidents, those would be long gone. Rohypnol clears the system in 24 to 48 hours. Unless, Doc said slowly, someone kept evidence. The room went quiet. Karen looked up. What kind of evidence? Hair samples, blood draws, urine tests, anything that might have been preserved from past hospital visits. Karen's face went pale. Rebecca, my daughter, she got sick at a party last year, Jordan's party. We thought it was alcohol poisoning. Took her to the ER. They ran tests, kept samples. How old is Rebecca? She was 12 at the time. The implication hung poisonous in the air. Jordan had potentially drugged his own 13-year-old sister. The depravity suggested sociopathy beyond simple sexual assault. We need those medical records. Judge's voice was ice. If Jordan drugged his own sister, he'd go to prison regardless of the Grace's case. Cisco finished. Drugging a minor, endangerment of a child, federal charges possible. Karen stood abruptly, her chair scraping hardwood. I need air. She stumbled toward the door. Grace surprised everyone by following, catching Karen's arm gently. Mrs. Hale? Karen, wait. They stood in the doorway, 17-year-old victim facing 45-year-old mother of her rapist. The tableau carried more weight than any courtroom testimony. I'm sorry, Karen whispered. I'm so desperately sorry for what my son did to you. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I raised him. I missed the signs. No, Het. Grace's voice carried surprising strength. Jordan made his choices. You're not responsible for those. But you're taking responsibility for making this right. That takes courage. The two women embraced, crying together in a doorway, while 7 old warriors watched and understood they were witnessing something sacred, shared trauma, creating unexpected alliance. Ironclad spoke quietly. We've got our path forward. Multiple victims, pattern evidence, possible drugging charges, Karen's testimony. We've got enough to bury Jordan Hale in his father's political career. But, Slate heard the unspoken caveat, but it requires these girls going public, testifying, facing Pettigrew's cross-examination. Not everyone will have Grace's courage. Some will back out. And if enough do, we're back where we started. Then we make sure they don't back out, Bear rumbled. We support them, show them they're not alone. That still might not be enough. The brutal honesty was necessary. They needed to prepare for the possibility that even with everything they'd discovered, Jordan might still walk free. Money and influence could overcome truth with depressing regularity. Slate's phone buzzed. Text from unknown number. We need to talk. Tonight. Marker's point. Come alone, Jordan. He showed the message to the group. Reactions were immediate and unanimous. Trap, Cisco said flatly. Absolutely. Judge agreed. He's trying to isolate you, get you alone, provoke you into assault claim self-defense. It's classic. Or, Wrench suggested, it's a kid who knows he's cornered and wants to negotiate. Even if it's negotiation, Ben can't go alone. Ironclad's tone brooked no argument. We go with him. Stay back out of sight, but present if things go wrong. Grace grabbed Slate's arm. Daddy, no. This is exactly what they want. You go out there, Jordan, or his father, or Pettigrew will manufacture some incident to get you arrested. Slate said slowly, Jordan really does want to talk. And maybe, just maybe, he'll say something incriminating that we can use. Judge caught on immediately. You want to record the conversation. Montana's a one-party consent state. I can legally record any conversation I'm part of without telling the other party. If Jordan confesses on tape, we've got him, regardless of what happens with other victims. The plan was risky but viable. Slate would wear a wire. The brothers would position themselves around Marker's point, hidden but ready to intervene. If Jordan attacked or tried to set him up, they'd have witnesses. If Jordan said anything incriminating, they'd have evidence. Karen spoke up, having composed herself. I want to help. Tell me what to do. You've done enough, Slate said. Go home. Protect your daughter. Let us handle this. Jordan is my son, my responsibility. I should be there. No. The word came out harder than intended. Karen, you have given us everything we need, but you can't be part of what happens next. For Rebecca's sake, she needs at least one parent who survives this intact. The truth of that settled the argument. Karen nodded, gathered her things. Mr. Mercer, Ben, bring my son to justice, please. I will, one way or another. After she left, the brothers began preparations. Doc pulled a recording device from his medical bag. He'd used similar equipment for patient interviews and had several on hand. The device was small, easily concealed with 12 hours of battery life. Test it, Slate spoke into the microphone. The playback was crystal clear. Perfect. Now remember, you need to get him talking. Ask open-ended questions. Let him brag. Guys like Jordan cannot help themselves. They need to boast about their conquests. And if he attacks me, you defend yourself. Reasonable force only, and we'll be there within seconds. Cisco laid out tactical positions on a hand-drawn map of Markers Point. Overlook has 3 approaches. Main Road hiking trail from the east and a service road rarely used. We'll have Bear on Main Road, Wrench on hiking trail, me on service road. Ironclad Preacher and Doc will be in vehicles at different positions with sight lines to the Overlook. Judge stays here with Grace, monitors the recording remotely. The military precision was both comforting and alarming. They were planning an operation as if heading into combat, which in a sense they were. Grace insisted on participating in planning despite Judge's objections. This is my fight. I'm not sitting home waiting. You're also the victim. If something goes wrong, you can't be implicated. Then I'll stay in the car with Judge. But I'm going. Father and daughter locked eyes. Slate saw Linda in Grace's expression, that same immovable determination that had first attracted him 40 years ago. Okay, but you stay in the vehicle no matter what happens. Deal. By 11 p.m. they were in position. Markers Point sat 20 minutes outside town, a scenic overlook, popular with tourists and teenagers. The parking area accommodated a dozen cars, but tonight sat empty except for Slate's truck and one other vehicle, a black Ford F-250 with lifted suspension and custom rims. Jordan's truck. Slate exited his vehicle, the recording device warm against his chest beneath his flannel shirt. The night was cold, Montana autumn, asserting itself after sunset. Stars blazed overhead, visible in ways they never were in cities. Beautiful and indifferent. Jordan Hale sat on his truck's tailgate legs, dangling beer in hand. He looked younger than 18, a boy playing at being a man, wearing confidence like an ill-fitting costume. You came. Wasn't sure you would. You asked me here. I came. Now talk. Jordan jumped down, landing with athletic grace. Up close, Slate could see Grace's scratches healing on his neck, faint marks she'd left while fighting for her safety. My lawyer says I shouldn't talk to you. Says anything I say could be used against me. Then why am I here? Because I'm tired of this. Tired of everyone treating me like a criminal. I didn't do anything wrong. The casual certainty was staggering. Jordan genuinely seemed to believe his own lie. You raped my daughter. No, we had sex. She wanted it. Then she got clingy afterward and I told her it was just a hookup. She got mad and made up this assault story to get back at me. That's not what happened. Yeah, were you there? Did you see what happened in my truck? I saw what you left behind, the bruises, the trauma, the damage you did. Jordan's expression hardened. Look, I came here to try to work this out. My parents are offering you money, a lot of money, enough to set up Grace for college, maybe help you retire. All you have to do is make this go away. My daughter's not for sale. Everyone's for sale, Mr. Mercer. It's just a question of price. The casual nihilism was worse than rage. Jordan truly believed people were commodities, that money could purchase immunity from consequence. Tell me about the other girls. Jordan's confidence flickered. What other girls? Emma Rodriguez, Ashley Brennan, Michelle Porter, Jessica Yang. Should I continue? I don't know what you're talking about. Your mother found your phone, the messages, everything. The color drained from Jordan's face. For the first time, fear replaced arrogance. You're lying. My mom would never. She turned the evidence over this afternoon. Text messages bragging about drugging girls. Photos, details. It's over, Jordan. Even your father's money can't fix this. Jordan's beer slipped from his hands, shattered on asphalt. His breathing quickened. And then to Slate's surprise, he laughed. You think you've won. You think evidence matters. My father's already talking to the judge. Hampton owes him favors. The trial won't even make it to jury. It'll get dismissed on procedural grounds. You're confessing. I'm stating facts. Yeah, I fucked a Grace. Yeah, she fought a little at first. They always do, but by the end she was into it. They always are once they stop pretending they're good girls. The casual admission, the utter lack of remorse crystallized everything. Jordan Hale wasn't just a rapist. He was a sociopath incapable of understanding why his actions were wrong. Slate's hands clenched. The old rage surged, demanding blood, promising satisfaction if he just gave in and beat Jordan Hale's smug face into unrecognizable pulp. Linda's voice ghost in memory. You're better than this. How many? How many what? How many girls have you raped? Jordan actually considered the question. Depends how you count. If you mean girls who said no initially but came around maybe a dozen. If you mean girls who stayed no throughout, probably 5 or 6. I didn't keep exact records. The confession was being recorded, every word, every casual admission of serial predation. Jordan was destroying himself and didn't even realize it. Why, Basvan? Why what? Why rape them? You're good-looking, wealthy, popular. You could have consensual sex easily. Why force it? Jordan's expression suggested genuine puzzlement at the question. Because I can. Because it's more exciting when they fight. Because watching someone realize they can't stop you, that they're completely powerless. He paused, searching for words. That's better than any normal sex. It's about power, Mr. Mercer. Surely you understand that. You are in Vietnam. You killed people. You know what it feels like to have complete control over someone else's life. The comparison was obscene. Slate had killed enemy combatants in wartime following orders protecting his unit. Jordan was raping teenage girls for entertainment. We're nothing alike. Sure we are. We're both men who take what we want. The difference is society approved your violence and condemns mine. But fundamentally, we're the same. I'm going to destroy you. Jordan's smirk returned. No, you won't. My father's already planning our next moves. If the trial actually happens, which it won't, we'll drag Grace through hell. Every boyfriend, every party, every social media post. We'll make her look like the town slut who's crying rape because I rejected her. By the time we're done, she'll wish she'd taken the money. Is that a threat? It's a promise. And here's another one. When this is over and I walk free, I'm going to find Grace again. Finish what we started. Make sure she remembers me for the rest of her life. The threat against Grace shattered Slate's control. He moved without conscious decision, 40 years of violence training taking over. His hands shot out, grabbed Jordan's throat, slammed him back against the truck with force that crumpled metal. You stay away from my daughter. Jordan couldn't breathe to respond, his face reddening, eyes bulging. His hands clawed at Slate's arm but couldn't break the grip. From the darkness, Ironclad's voice. Ben, let him go. You're being recorded too. The reminder penetrated Rage's haze. Slate released Jordan, stepped back. Jordan collapsed, gasping, hand to his throat. You assaulted me. That's cough wheeze. That's assault. I'm pressing charges. Headlights blazed from multiple directions as the brothers converged. Bear's bulk emerged first, followed by Wrench, Cisco, Doc, Preacher, Ironclad, 7 old men surrounding one entitled boy. You're pressing charges, Cisco's cop voice was pure authority. Based on what we witnessed, you threatening to rape Grace again. That's criminal threatening, plus everything you just confessed to on Mr. Mercer's recording device. Jordan's eyes widened. You recorded me. That's illegal. Montana's one-party consent state? Judge's voice called from the approaching vehicle. Perfectly legal. And you just confessed to multiple sexual assaults. Want to keep digging? Jordan looked around, calculating. 7 men, 1 exit, his arrogance finally meeting reality it couldn't charm or buy its way past. My father can't help you anymore. Karen Hale's voice cut through the night. She emerged from Judge's vehicle, Grace beside her. I've already called District Attorney Chen. Played her the recording in real time. She's issuing an arrest warrant now. Mom. The single word carried betrayal and incomprehension. Jordan had never imagined his own mother would turn against him. You threatened to rape Grace again, in front of witnesses. That threat alone is enough to revoke any bail pending trial. But combined with your confession to serial assault, Jordan, you're going to prison. Red and blue lights appeared on the access road. Sheriff Paulson's cruiser followed by 2 deputies. Danny emerged, handcuffs ready. Jordan Hale, you're under arrest for multiple counts of sexual assault, criminal threatening, and witness intimidation. You have the right to remain silent. Jordan's legs folded. He sat hard on the asphalt, all arrogance evaporated, replaced by shock. The deputies hauled him up, cuffed him, loaded him into the cruiser. Danny approached Slate. Got a confession to 6 separate sexual assaults, plus the threat against Grace. Pettigrew can't defend against this. The DA's filing charges tonight. Full prosecution. What about David Hale? His influence ends when the evidence is this overwhelming. And when his own wife testifies against his son, the mayor's already distancing himself. Hale's political career is done. Karen stood apart watching her son's arrest with expression Slate couldn't quite read. Not satisfaction, but maybe relief. The relief of finally doing the right thing after years of enabling. Grace moved to Slate's side, took his hand. Is it over? The arrest part, trial's still ahead, but with his confession, with your mother's evidence, with other victims coming forward, yeah, baby girl, I think it's over. She buried her face in his chest, her shoulders shaking, but this time the tears were different. Not trauma's tears, but release. Yeah. 3 months later, Copper Ridge County Courthouse hosted Jordan Hale's sentencing. Judge Hampton had recused himself after the prosecution filed ethics complaints about his relationship with David Hale. The replacement judge brought in from Helena carried no local connections or obligations. Jordan had pled guilty to 6 counts of sexual assault, 1 count of drugging a minor, and 1 count of criminal threatening. The plea deal eliminated trial but ensured significant prison time. The courtroom was packed. Grace sat in the front row between Slate and Karen Hale, an odd alliance but one forged in shared mission. Behind them, the 7 brothers occupied a full bench. Behind them, 5 other young women, Emma Ashley, Michelle Jessica, and Tessa. Jordan's victims finding courage in numbers. Marcus Pettigrew had withdrawn from the case after the confession recording went public. Jordan's new public defender looked overmatched and exhausted. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Martinez, reviewed the case file with meticulous attention before speaking. Mr. Hale, please stand. Jordan rose, prison jumpsuit replacing his usual expensive clothes. 3 months in county lockup had stripped away the arrogance. He looked young and scared and very small. I've read your case file, the evidence, the victim impact statements. I've reviewed your confession and the pattern of predation spanning 3 years. I've considered your age, your previously clean record, and the letters submitted by your father and his associates pleading for leniency. She paused, removed her glasses. And I find myself thinking about the 6 young women whose lives you damaged, the families you hurt, the trust you violated. You weren't a child making a mistake, Mr. Hale. You were a predator exploiting access and privilege to harm vulnerable people. Jordan's attorney started to speak. Judge Martinez silenced him with a look. The prosecution recommended 20 years with possibility of parole after 10. Your defense requested 5 years. I'm sentencing you to 25 years in state prison with possibility of parole after 15. You'll be 43 years old before you're eligible for release. Perhaps by then you'll have developed the empathy and conscience you currently lack. The gavel fell. Jordan collapsed. His attorney steadied him. Deputies moved to escort him out. As Jordan passed the victim's row, he made eye contact with Grace. For a moment, Slate tensed, ready to intervene if Jordan said anything. But Jordan just looked at her with something that might have been understanding, or regret, or perhaps just the recognition that actions carried consequences, even for wealthy boys who'd thought themselves immune. Outside the courthouse, media had assembled. The story of a city councilman's son's fall from grace had attracted regional attention. Reporters shouted questions. Grace ignored them, walking with head high between her father and Karen Hale. At the bottom of the courthouse steps, Grace stopped, turned to face the cameras. I have something to say. Slate started to object, but she squeezed his hand. I was raped. It happened. It was real. And for a while I thought my life was over, that the trauma had broken me permanently. Her voice was steady, clear, carrying across the crowd. But I'm not broken. I'm healing. With help from my father, from therapy, from people who believed me when it would have been easier to stay silent. Jordan Hale tried to destroy me. Instead, he destroyed himself. She looked directly into the nearest camera. To any other survivors out there, you're not alone. Your truth matters. And there are people who will fight for you. It's hard. It's terrifying, but it's worth it. The reporters erupted with follow-up questions. Grace ignored them, walked to Slate's truck, climbed in. Her composure lasted until they were 3 blocks away, then crumbled into tears of relief and exhaustion and catharsis. Slate pulled over, held her while she cried. The seven brothers' motorcycles formed a protective semicircle around the truck, blocking view from passing vehicles, giving Grace privacy for her breakdown. "You did good, baby girl. Your mom would be so proud." "I wish she was here." "She is, always." 6 months after sentencing, life had achieved something approximating normalcy. Grace had started college, local community college, to stay close to home, but she was studying, engaging, slowly reclaiming the future Jordan had tried to steal. Her therapy continued twice weekly. The nightmares had decreased. The anxiety attacks had become manageable. She'd even started dating again, carefully with rules about communication and boundaries, but she was trying. Mercer's Motors had survived financially thanks to the brothers' support and an unexpected influx of business from people who'd followed the case and wanted to support Grace's family. Slate had hired an assistant, a young mechanic named Tommy, who had skill and work ethic and reminded him of himself at 25. The brothers still met weekly poker games and rides that had evolved into something deeper. They discovered that helping Grace had given them purpose. So they'd formalized it, the Seven Brothers Support Network, offering assistance to assault survivors and their families. It wasn't much, just 7 old men with time and skills and determination. But it was something. Karen Hale had divorced David, who'd resigned from city council and moved to Seattle to escape the scandal. She and Rebecca had stayed in Copper Ridge, Karen working at the local women's shelter, turning her guilt into constructive action. She and Grace had developed an unlikely friendship trauma, creating connection conventional society wouldn't. On a Saturday in April, Slate and Grace drove to the cemetery where Linda was buried. They'd brought flowers, wildflowers, Linda's favorite. Grace arranged them carefully on the headstone while Slate knelt, joints protesting, but heart steady. "Hey, babe, been a while. Sorry about that." Grace smiled at her father's habit of talking to her mother's grave. "Wanted to let you know Grace is doing good. Real good. She's strong, Linda, like you were. She survived something that would have destroyed lesser people, and she's helping others survive too." He paused, emotion tightening his throat. "I almost lost it. Almost threw away everything you believed I could be. But I remembered my promise. Remembered you believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself. So I stayed on the right side of the line. For you, for Grace, for the man you thought I could become." Grace knelt beside him, added her own words. "Hi, Mom, I miss you, especially lately. Could have used your advice, but I think I figured it out. How to be strong and scared at the same time. How to ask for help. How to keep fighting even when it seems hopeless." They sat in comfortable silence, spring sun warming their shoulders, birds singing in nearby trees. Life continuing despite tragedy, despite trauma, despite everything that tried to break them. "Daddy, yeah. Thank you for believing me, for fighting, for not giving up." "Nothing to thank me for. That's what fathers do." "Not all fathers. I'm lucky." "I'm the lucky one, baby girl." They stayed another hour talking to Linda's memory, sharing stories, laughing at remembered moments. Then they drove home to the house where Linda had picked out curtains and planted gardens and made a home for her unlikely family. That evening, the brothers gathered for their weekly meeting. But tonight wasn't about planning or strategy. Tonight was celebration. Bear had brought enough food for a small army. Doc had contributed wine. Wrench had rigged a sound system for music. They ate and drank and told stories that grew more embellished with each retelling. Wars they'd survived, mistakes they'd made, loves they'd found and lost. The comfortable intimacy of men who'd seen each other at their worst and chosen brotherhood anyway. As the party wound down, Ironclad raised his beer. A toast to Grace, who showed more courage than all of us combined. To Slate, who kept his promise when breaking it would have been easier. To Karen, who chose justice over family. And to Linda, who's still guiding us from wherever she is. 7 bottles clinked together, the sound of men honoring memory and celebrating survival. Grace watched from the doorway, smiled, retreated to her room. She pulled out her laptop, opened a new document, started typing. My name is Grace Mercer. When I was 17, I was raped. This is my story, not because trauma defines me, but because silence protects predators. And I'm done being silent. The words flowed easier than expected. Her story, her truth, her choice to share or keep private, but having the choice that was everything. In the living room, Slate looked around at his brothers, at the life he'd built from the ruins of old mistakes and new tragedies. It wasn't the life he'd planned, it was better, because it was real, hard-won, earned through 40 years of choosing to be better than his worst impulses. Linda would approve. He was sure of it. Epilogue, 2 years later, on a warm Montana evening, Slate stood in his garage working on the Mustang restoration he'd finally finished. The car gleamed every surface, polished engine purring with the precision only obsessive mechanical work could achieve. Grace appeared in the doorway, diploma in hand. Graduated, associate's degree, thinking about transferring to university next year. Pride swelled in his chest. Your mom would be proud. She'd probably tell me to stop procrastinating and just commit to the 4-year program. True, they laughed together, easy and comfortable. There's someone I want you to meet. He's outside. Been nervous about introducing you. A boy, a man, he's 21, pre-med, met him in biology class. He's different, good different. Slate wiped his hands, prepared to meet whatever young man had captured his daughter's interest, and prepared to be the protective father who'd make sure this one understood exactly what boundaries meant. But as he walked toward the door, Grace caught his arm. Daddy, thank you for everything, for believing me, for fighting, for being exactly the father I needed. I love you, baby girl. I love you too. They walked outside together into evening light toward whatever future waited, scarred but unbroken, healing but not healed, together. And that was enough.